Hello aspirants. So today the GS paper 1 has been concluded and we have seen questions coming up from various dimensions, and the effort here in this podcast would be to break down the questions in unique perspectives and also to give an idea about how different ideas can be put up into each and every questions. So we have Pradeep Sir who will handle the history questions, we have Sudeep Sir who will take care of the geography questions, and me Sapna will handle culture and Indian society questions. So let's begin.
Hi guys, one small thing that I want to just mention before we start off the analysis is, if you students have appeared for mains paper and if you have come back and if you have started to watch this video, please stop it. Don't watch the video if you are writing mains exam. You people should not watch any videos until you finish your optional papers. So please make sure that you're focused. This videos will always be there and you can watch it after the exam. So one last time, because yesterday after watching a lot of videos, many mains students started to call me and ask me, sir, many videos they're telling that essay paper is very easy. But we felt that section A of essay was a little difficult. So I'm afraid. So I had to sit the entire day and convince them that it was okay and it was really difficult. So the way we analyze outside the exam room will be completely different from the way a student will feel inside the exam room. So please, if anyone is appearing for the mains exam, I would plead you people not to watch the video until the mains exam is over. That is one small caution. Otherwise, please users enjoy the expertise as well as enjoy their experiences. You'll definitely make a good use of it.
To have a general perspective, the questions from history part, I think they have given equal weightage to ancient, medieval, art and culture, modern India, post-independence and world history. And like one question each, one question from ancient, one question from medieval, one question from art and culture, one question from modern India, world history and post-independence. So that way they have brought up a very balanced paper. And with regard to society part, the focus more has been on the globalization and its effect on family, the lifestyle. So therefore, the question has been on obesity. And similarly, with regard to geography, like we can see, they are shifting from the physical geography to socio-economic geography part of the syllabus. So with this broad observation, let's get started with the discussion. Firstly, we'll take up the question. The first question, discuss the salient features of Harappan architecture. So this was very much on the expected lines, since it marks the 100th anniversary of IVC discovery by Dayaram Sahni, Alexander Marshall and James Marshall and Alexander Cunningham. So this was much on the expected lines, and you can more or less mention that as the introduction for this question. And you can also mention, link it to the national movement. So this discovery rekindled the nationalist consciousness among Indians, and since Britishers were telling us, they were giving us the theory of white man's burden, theory of civilizing machine, providential machine, etc. That we were savages, uncivilized, and they civilized us. So this was a befitting reply to them, the discovery of IVC. So you can write all these things in the introduction. And to get started with the body part of it, this is a simple, straightforward question asking for the salient features of the Harappan architecture. So one small validation which you can do here is, you can draw the map in the margins indicating the various important places of civilization. Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Dholavira, so Rakigadi, you can mention all these things in the map. So as to give a brief overview of your understanding over the topic. And with regard to the features, we can talk about the urban planning. So the grid pattern of cities they had, how roads were intersecting in the right angles. And you can give examples like Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Kalibangan, etc. for this particular point. Secondly, you can mention about the fortification, the presence of citadel, the defensive architecture of, and it was also a kind of a class differentiation. Plus, it was also a kind of defensive architecture which is present in the cities like Harappa and Dholavira. And you can also talk about the third point being the granaries and the warehouses. So how they used to store the food grains for their emergency times, or to deal with the famines or drought or floods, where it will be accompanied with a lot of crop loss, etc. So you can mention the presence of granaries in Harappa. There were 6 granaries, and also in Lothal there was 64 rooms in that granary. You can mention that. And nextly, you can also talk about the drainage system. So like with so many urban floods in news, you can give a contemporary relevance to this particular point as well. So the drainage management, their expertise was very good, and especially they had covered drains, and this will help us to combat the spread of diseases like plague, chikungunya, malaria, all these things. So that is also one relevance. You can give the examples for this as well, and then you can proceed with dockyard. So dockyard being used for the trade as well as the travel, both the aspects. And since we all know that IVC had trade links with the different civilizations across the world, we can mention the presence of the great dockyard in Lothal, which also signifies their advancement in the maritime architecture. And then you can talk about their water management, the efficient water management practices, the water harvesting structures they had in places like Dholavira. And you can also mention about the public utility spaces they had, like the Great Bath in Mohenjo-daro. And you can also mention the advancements they had, like they used the burnt bricks, there was proper lining, and there was proper water proofing. So all these things you can mention as an example for the engineering marvels of Indus Valley civilization. And apart from that, you can mention something that is not asked also, like as a brownie point.
Yeah.
Maybe the examiner will be expecting this from you because we have a lot of competition. The 0.5 marks here and there can be the game changer for you. So you can also mention about the sculptures, whether it is the bearded priest or the dancing girl or the Pashupati Mahadeva or the seals that they used during the Indus Valley civilization as one point to showcase their cultural aspect of life. So having mentioned all these things, you can, in the conclusion part, you can give a contemporary relevance that the present, the smart city. I think there is one question on smart city.
Yeah, 2013 there was a question.
Yeah. And 13 also, a direct question came asking us to link what lessons we can learn from Indus Valley civilization to be integrated in the smart city program. So similarly here in the conclusion, you can use the same thing, that the relevance of Indus Valley civilization, and you can also mention about the greatness, the civic sense they had, and how scientifically advanced they were when compared to their contemporary civilizations. All these things you can mention in the conclusion, and you can bring a very good closure to this answer. Ma'am and sir, anything to add to it?
No, sir. I think you have covered it comprehensively.
Okay.
Ma'am, please.
There was a book recently written by Devdutt Patnaik on the peace-loving nature of Harappan people. So the whole idea of Indian diplomacy being peace-oriented, probably we get it a lot from Harappan civilization. So as Pradeep Sir mentioned, the brownie point could also be in a fashion where the cities were designed in such a way that there is hardly any place for social conflicts arising there. So that could be something I would like to add.
And mentioning the contemporary literatures can also be a very good brownie point to score like 0.25 or 0.5 marks more than the competitors. Okay. So having concluded the discussion of question number 1, we'll proceed to question number 2. Examine the main aspects of Akbar's religious syncretism. So this question, it has the contemporary relevance as well, given the socio-religious conflicts we have experiencing in the various aspects of life, and resurgence of the divide and rule policy that we are witnessing in the recent times. And the Akbar's values or his religious policies can be a panacea, or it can be a solution to the modern day crisis that we are undergoing. So you can mention this in the answer, or you can write Akbar tried to integrate the diverse religious systems, like he took the various elements of Hinduism, Islam, Zoroastrianism, Christianity, Sikhism, etc., and he tried to integrate it into one beautiful religion. And he had the targets of bringing about the political stability, and also bringing the social harmony, and also to expand his sphere of influence, like imperial legitimacy. With these 3 important goals in mind, he tried to bring about this religious harmony or religious syncretism. Now, we'll write the subheading as main aspects of Akbar's religious policies, and then proceed with the body of the answer. And here we can write about the first thing, the policy of Sul-I-Kul. So this assumes a lot of significance, because Sul-I-Kul means peace for all. So this is something which is relevant for all times. And in this, Akbar talks about the principles of universal tolerance and the respect for other religions. So that is one important element of Sulaikul. And this Sulaikul, as we can see, it is inspired. It was inspired by Sufi principles. So you all know, like Akbar was under the influence of a lot of Sufi saints. So that is one thing which made him have this liberal ideas and thoughts when compared to the contemporary rulers and his predecessors. He was religiously very liberal. So maybe the influence of Sufi saints played a very important role in this regard. And we can mention the Sufi influence. And then we can proceed to the second point, Ibadat Khana dialogues, since 1575 onwards. And in Ibadat Khana, Akbar used to invite the religious leaders belonging to different faiths for like a productive debate where they used to exchange ideas, and maybe that helped him to form the basis of his future thought. He wanted to bring one universal faith like Din-e-Ilahi. So the discussions of Ibadat Khana in Fatehpur Sikri, maybe that formed the basis of his religious thoughts. So having said that, we'll proceed to Din-e-Ilahi. So it is something related to creating an ethical order. Just like Ashoka used to come up with Dhammas, Akbar came up with Din-e-Ilahi, where he wanted to integrate different great elements of different religions. Like from Hinduism, he was very inspired by the concept of karma, and from Christianity, he was inspired by the concept of piety. And with regard to Islam, piety, and with regard to Christianity, he was inspired by the concept of charity. And Zoroastrianism, he was deeply respecting the concept of fire worship. We want to integrate all these things into one beautiful ethical order, just like Ashoka, the great emperor Ashoka, aspired. And nextly, we can write about how Akbar tried to deal with various discriminatory policies against other faiths. So, for example, he abolished jizya, and he also recruited various Hindus for higher administrative positions. For example, Todarmal and Man Singh, even Birbal, one among these Navaratnas. He did all these things. And you can also talk about his respect for various diverse traditions. So during the times of Akbar, we can see the process of translation of various Hindu religious scripts. For example, Mahabharata got translated as Rasmanama. And Akbar also followed the policy of having matrimonial alliances with various Rajputs and kings of various other faiths. And you can also notice that he never forced his queens to embrace Islam or to get religiously converted. So that is something what is outstanding about Akbar. And having said all these points, like for a 10 marker, 5 to 6 points, it is more than sufficient. And in the conclusion, you can like make a quote from one of the very famous historian. He has told one beautiful thing about Akbar. Irfan Habib is the historian. He states like Akbar's religious policy was less about theology and more about empire building through cultural integration. Okay. You can mention this quote, and you can like close this answer. And these kind of quotes that depict like the essence of the question will be like helping you to close out the answer on a very positivistic note, and it will obviously impress the examiner and fetch you that most important brownie points. Okay, so I hope this will bring the closure of the second question. And
Sir, just one point. As you mentioned, Akbar was managing the kind of religion not from religious perspective, but as a cultural unity and growth of civil empire by this. So as we have this conversation on whether secularism, Indian idea of secularism, of blending everything together, and how Gandhiji mentioned that religion should be the essence of politics. Yes. So ethical values of every religion should be guiding principle for our leaders. So I think Akbar is a right role model in that note as well.
True, ma'am. And you can also mention his early contemporary in the form of Krishna Devaraya in the closing note. That can also be done along with the historians. So maybe Krishna Devaraya was a kind of inspiration to Akbar. So his policies of religious coexistence. So how he respected the traditions of Bahmani rulers. Maybe that would have had a profound influence on Akbar's policies. So now let us proceed to the third question. Ma'am, please
Yeah.
lead the discussion.
So the third question is from Art and Culture. The sculptors filled Chandela art form with resilient vigor and breadth of life. Elucidate. So this question is from the Chandela Empire, or specifically talking about Khajuraho group of temples and the temples surrounding these area in Madhya Pradesh. So if we recall what could be the source of the question, we see that in the G20 summit that India had hosted, certain tourism related conferences were held in Khajuraho group of temples. We also have a news coming out very recently that a lake surrounding this temple, which had a historic dam built, was destroyed in a renovation attempt, and it is irreparable now. So probably this could be the context behind which the question around Chandela kingdom has been coming. So what could be the starting point? One major thing we need to observe here is the focus is on art form and not the architecture of the place. So art form would mainly refer to the sculptural beauty and how uniquely the artifacts on the temples have been projected as. So we will be first having to introduce with a catchy statement on how various philosophers, or we can say the historians, have quoted this temple, and many of them are of the opinion that it is an architectural marvel along with sculptural beauty. As we know, the temples are mainly made out of granitic stone. Making an art form with this sculptural beauty would be difficult. So this paradox can be highlighted in the introduction part. Going through this, we can say, content of the question or major points, we can talk about every single temple here. 2-3 temples you can take examples of and tell how the idea of sculpture has been told here. And especially, a major example is Kandariya Mahadev temple, where the concept of tantricism and erotic sculptures are the focus point, and it is depicting the daily life. And when we talk about art form of Chandelas especially, it should not be only about what is there on the temple premises, how it is carved or how unique it is, as both exterior and interior of the temples have the carvings. The focus also should be a little on the society part, or why these sculptures made into the temple premises. So every time a temple is built, there needs to be an explanation as in why this sculpture is on the temple. So it is with the idea why erotic sculptures were mainly present on many of these temples are because these ideas of erotic sculpture, or basically tantricism, was the norm of the day during this time. And also many different religious ideas were also prevailing in different temples. Like Hinduism ideas were prominent. Jainism as an idea was also prevalent in many of these architectures. We have Chausat Yogini temple, again an idea of tantricism. Mithuna couples will be a major part of it. So we should not be just touching about art forms, but also a little aspect of why it is. Probably that could be adding a little advantage, is what I would feel. And in the conclusion part, we can tell it is rightly placed in the UNESCO World Heritage Site, and acting as a great example of globalization of Indian culture, and also part of how historical India had played a major role in creating an entire livelihood out of temple architecture. Yes, sir. Any other points if you both would like to add?
Nothing.
Yes,
I have one small thing to add on.
Yes, sir.
So the first thing is you can see how like the Chandela architecture and the sculpture
Yeah,
has represented different faiths.
correct.
So whether it is Vaishnava, Shaiva, Shakta, or
Yes.
even Jainist elements has been added to it. And one prominent element of Chandela architecture is the what you call as the erotic sculptures. So which symbolizes Mithuna or erotic couples. So this Mithuna is symbolic of cosmic union.
Right.
So Prakriti and Purusha.
Purusha. Correct.
So all these things which led to the birth of universe. So that is one thing which stands out in with regard to Chandela architecture. And since you told that we can mention about the archaeologist and all, I would like to quote one archaeologist, especially Percy Brown.
Yes.
So my optional is literature, man. So
Correct.
we get to read about these various archaeologists and their opinions. And he has told that the architectures of Chandelas, especially Khajuraho, is a hymn to life. I mean, let me spell it. I mean, I am having cold. I'm sorry. My pronunciations might not be clear. So HYMN, hymn to life, and pain to joy. PAEAN, pain to joy. So that is one thing which I'd like to quote. And you can also look at UNESCO World Heritage body while including this Chandela architecture into the UNESCO list of monuments. They told the temples of Khajuraho achieved the great artistic heights in their integration of architecture and sculpture. So
True.
you can also add that point. I hope this can be some value addition
Yes,
to whatever you
definitely,
do.
sir. True.
So, sir, like
Yes. All right, guys. So, thank you, ma'am, and sir, for such a comprehensive uh, insights. Now, let us go into the geography part of paper one. So, in geography, usually you get every year you get 8 questions, 4 into 10 markers and 4 into 15 markers. So, overall in GS1, in geography as a subject, you'll be getting 100 marks for sure every year. That is the pattern. That is how it is. As Pradeep sir pointed out in the beginning, we have moved, or UPSC has moved from physical geography dominance to socio-economic geography dominance. So obviously you should have some idea of socio-economic geography. At the end, I will also let you know how to go about it for all the students who are worried about it. But overall, if I come to geography as a subject, the subject seems to be on a conventional pattern. Like we can know that the questions come in the same way. One question compared out of 8 questions, one question was relatively difficult. That was talking about the distribution or occurrences of petroleum and natural gas. So that is relatively difficult because they have gone into very specific of asking the difference between onshore and offshore. So that is where a little it's a little tricky. But apart from that, the other 7 questions are pretty straightforward, provided that you have practiced writing answers. Many students, what happens, they are mainly dominant on the physical geography part, and they usually neglect the socio-economic geography, and that is where they feel that it is a little difficult. But if you have practiced the socio-economic geography, I think it is not very difficult. But as I told you, we sitting outside the exam hall will always feel that it is relatively easy when compared to people who are sitting inside. So please don't take this on the face value. All right, guys. So let us start off with the fourth question. The fourth question is, how are climate change and the sea level rise affecting the very existence of many island nations? Discuss with examples. See, climate change is a theme that has been repeated from the previous years. Last year, if you remember, they had asked about how sea level rise or the sea surface temperature rise is affecting the impact of cyclones. Okay, so that was also on the theme of climate change. This is also on the theme of climate change. So as a student, if you have analyzed the previous year questions, you should have prepared on climate change and its effect on different aspects of the world as well as India. So that is a norm. So in that manner, I'm telling that climate change was predictable. Now coming to climate change, sea level rise and its effect on many island nations. As I told you in geography, I keep telling my students that the diagram is compulsory. Here, since they're asking many island nations, you have to draw the world map and show the spatial vulnerability of all those islands to climate change. So that is very, very important. So you can show the Mesoamerican reef in the North American continent. You can show the Pacific island nations in the Pacific Ocean, as well as you can show the coral islands of the Indian Ocean. That is also very important. So these 3 groups of islands are highly vulnerable to the sea level rise as well as the effects of climate change. So the diagram is compulsory and it should come. Now coming to the introduction part, obviously, how are climate change and sea level rise affecting the very existence of many island nations? Start always with the definition approach in geography. You can define what exactly is climate change and how that climate change will result in the eventual sea level rise. Okay, so you can talk about global warming being the cause, how the climate change becomes the effect, and how that climate change as an effect will create sea level rise because of the melting of glaciers. So pretty normal and straightforward. Then go into how does it affect the different island nations. You can give one case study of Goramora Islands of Bengal, West Bengal in Sundarbans, which is actually an island that is submerging. Actually, recent times the Indian government had to, take in these climate refugees because these refugees were suffering from the crisis of sea level rise. So that case study can come because that had come in the newspaper. So if you're following that, you should be able to write that. But overall, coming to the question, they have told discuss with examples. Okay, so you have to bring in examples like coral islands. You have to bring in examples like the coastal islands. So you have to bring different examples and talk about their effect. So first, how do they affect? The first one is obviously the sea level rise will inundate the coastal lands. When it inundates the coastal lands, the farming that is being practiced along the coastal lands will be affected. So the agricultural productivity will be affected. That's the first point. The second is when the water comes inside, the water that comes inside is salt water. That salt water can percolate and intrude the groundwater, which affects and creates salt water intrusions and destroys the source of drinking water for the coastal communities. That's the second important reason. The third is the destruction of deltas. As you know, as the coastal water keeps coming inside, the deltas get destroyed. Deltas are an important habitat both for the marine ecosystem as well as for the human habitats. So deltas getting destroyed is a very important effect of sea level and climate change. And the last is fishing. The fishing industry gets affected because as the coastal water inundates into the land, it affects fishermen. Fishermen will not be able to get the fish stocks that they used to get because the water stops getting rejuvenated along the coastline because the water is coming inside. So that is another aspect. And the last is overall the livelihood opportunities or the livelihood status of the coastal communities in all these island nations. So you can talk about them. What happens to their livelihood is not only will they lose their source of income, they'll also be more vulnerable to diseases. So because the humidity increases, humidity will always make them more vulnerable to pandemics and epidemics that again affects the coastal communities and propel them for climate refugees or propel them to migrate due to climatical reasons. So overall, I think this is what my approach towards this question would be. Sir and ma'am, if there's anything, please you can add.
I would just like to add one more example, sir. Like recently, I think a month ago, there was an article in Hindu on Sierra Leone's island getting drowned. So most of the people now who are on the fringes have started coming to stay in the middle of the island.
Correct.
So it has led to a resource crunch now, and there is going to be conflict on a daily basis as in how to utilize this remaining resources. So most of them are of the opinion that the mainland government should rehabilitate them. But Sierra Leone as a country is very small.
Correct.
So this population as climate refugees would add into the problems of the nation.
100%.
So it was a very elaborate discussion with interviews of the local population. So I think that also could be an example for this.
And sir, I have like one or two
Sure, sir,
points. First thing is we can start by mentioning the IPC 2023
Yeah.
report, where they quote the sea level has risen by about 20 centimeters
Correct.
since 1900, and it can go up to 1 meter by 2100. And if the same level of climate change and the disasters continue, and that will threaten the existence of nations like Bangladesh, Maldives, and many small island developing countries like Kiribati, Tuvalu.
Correct.
So all these things. And one more small point is like I think we can also talk about the coral bleaching, especially the Great Barrier Reef, since it is a source of
Yeah.
livelihood for many coastal communities of small Pacific islands, FIPIC countries.
Correct.
So, and I think we can also add about decline in the arable land that will threaten the food security of the country.
Correct.
Like for example, because of the spread of this rise in the sea level, the groundwater aquifers might get contaminated by the salt waters, and that will decline the availability of not only the drinking water but also the water for irrigation of their agriculture.
Correct.
So their food security might also be threatened. I think these points can be added, sir.
Very good point, sir. So I think you people would have got a very good and fair idea of how to go about that question. So that is about the fourth question. Let us go on to the fifth question again. Again, a straightforward question from economic geography. What are non-farm primary activities? How are these activities related to physiographic features in India? Physiographic features means natural features in India. Discuss with suitable examples. Okay. As you know, the fifth question is talking pertaining to Indian geography. So stick to Indian geography and bring maps. Here, I think you should bring 4 maps of India. That will be much better, because when they say non-farm primary activities, you can bring 4 different dimensions. So since they have asked one specific question as what are non-farm primary activities as one separate question, elaborate a little bit on that rather than just giving the definition. You have to talk a little bit on that. So that is where you have to talk first. What are primary activities? Economic activities dependent directly on nature are primary activities. What are non-farm primary activities? Non-farm primary activities are those that are dependent on nature but are not involved in cultivation of crops. For example, it can be fishing, it can be forestry, it can be mining, it can be animal husbandry, etc. Any allied activities of this thing. So you elaborate like non-farm primary activities. Since they are dependent on nature, the physiographic features of any region plays an important role in determining the amount or intensity of economic activity of that non-farm primary activity. So that elaboration is very important in the first part. Coming to the second part, again very direct. So basically, see, you will have some set of physiographic features with you. As you're studying the Indian geography, you will know that there is some physiographic features like topography, climate, availability of water, accessibility, then there is labor, then there is vegetation, soil. These are all some basic physiographic features that you will have in your mind. So take one economic activity, arrange what are the 3 to 4 important physiographic features revolving around that economic activity. Go to the next one, try to arrange 2 or 3 important physiographic features that determines the economic activity. So if you go on doing that, you'll be able to write a very good answer. Now, I would like to divide this answer as 1, fishing, forestry, mining, animal husbandry. So in 4 dimensions I would like to take. When I talk about fishing, I would like to talk about 2 or 3 physical features like the long coastline of India, the topographical features of India, the continental shelf of India. Okay. So on these physiographic features, I would like to tell how fishing becomes very dominant along the coastline of India. Then if you go into the forestry, I will talk about the climate and its eventuality in creating diversity of forest. So in India, you have all types of forests, from evergreen forest to alpine vegetation, including deciduous. You have all type of vegetation, and how those vegetation will help in economic activity. In, let us say, Jammu and Kashmir, they'll provide softwood trees. So the softwood trees are important in lumbering. In deciduous forest, there are a lot of important minor forest produce that actually helps in the development of tribal economy. So in that way, within forest also, you can talk about different physiographic features with respect to diversity. Then coming to mining, as you already know, the Eastern Peninsular Plateau is the mining heartland of India. Why? Because there is Darwarian rocks there, and that presence of Darwarian rocks itself is the natural physiographic feature that has allowed us to mine that entire Eastern Peninsular Plateau that includes Odisha, Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh. Okay. Then coming to animal husbandry, the most viable parts in India which actually helps in animal husbandry is the arid regions. Since the arid regions have pastures, these pastures have propelled the population there to be dependent on animal husbandry. So that natural feature has in turn helped in the development of animal husbandry in India. So here, what I would like to tell is 4 small India maps, one showing the fishing potential, another showing the mining potential, another showing the forest trees, and another showing the animal husbandry. If you can draw small 4 maps and then elaborate the physical features that have helped these non-primary farm activities, it would be a beautiful answer. So this is overall my framework. Ma'am and sir, if you have any additions, please do make.
I just got
please.
reminded, Pradhan Mantri Dhan Dhanya Krishi Yojana is about utilizing these physiographic features because they are a bottom-up approach, sir. So based on the intervention of Niti Aayog, every district will have a plan to improve their agricultural activity, which will include non-farming activities as well. So elite activities also will be included. And the document also contains the term like it will be from based on the geographic conditions. So could be one of the points.
It can definitely be an a concluding remark where
Yeah.
how the government is also making use of the physiographical features to help develop the allied activities. Definitely a good point. Thank you, ma'am. All right. So shall we move on to the 6th one? All right. The 6th question is, guys, explain briefly the ecological and economic benefits of solar energy generation in India with suitable examples. Again, this comes from the same economic geography part. This is the second time in the last 6 years they are asking the question. Last time they had asked about the potential of solar energy in India. Now they're asking the ecological and economic benefits of solar energy in India. Again, as I told you, easier parts, if you have practiced the previous year questions, you should be able to answer this. Here, obviously, you will start by defining not the solar energy, but why India has high potential of solar energy. India being the tropical nation, having dominant insolation throughout the year, has very high potential to tap that solar energy and convert it into electrical energy. And hence, solar energy plays an important role in India's renewable energy status. So that is how I would like to start. Then obviously you have to draw the India map and show the potential of solar energy. That is definitely there. A map should always be there in the question. So obviously you're going to show the potential. Then as the question itself gives you the 2 dimensions, give the ecological dimensions and give the economic dimensions. The first is ecological dimension is one, it reduces the use of fossil fuels. It reduces pollution. It reduces the amount of, extraction or mining that has to be done for fossil fuels. So land scarification will reduce. So these are some of the ecological benefits. When you come to economic benefits, obviously it provides employment, it provides accessibility, affordability, it provides availability of energy to all. It provides decentralized form of energy, which helps in diffusion of innovation and entrepreneurship. All this, it is pretty very straightforward question. So I think you can easily generate n number of points for a 10 marker. All right. So, ma'am, if there's any addition, please do make, ma'am.
Yeah, sir, as you told, entrepreneurship and economic benefits are there. Under the rooftop Yojana, there is a component of skill development where local youth will be given skills with respect to repairing and installing of solar panels. So there's a kind of trust in the public in adaptation because these are people who are developed and trained from the government. So skills are definitely there and it will increase the rate of adoption of the solar panels at the household level. So this would again make it the concept of net neutrality that we want to plan a closer option.
Definitely you can stop by, concluding remark, you can definitely tell, as ma'am told, that 2070 is what we are aiming for, the carbon neutrality status, and this is an important benefit where solar energy plays an important role. Sir.
Sir, I have 1 or 2 points.
Definitely, sir.
The first thing is we can start with adding the solar potential of India, that is about 750 gigawatts as estimated by National Solar Mission. And We can also mention some government schemes to make the answer even more enriched, like National Solar Mission and India's initiative of International Solar Alliance, being the leader in that solar energy generation. And one more point to add to your ecological benefits that you told. When compared to the thermal and the nuclear power plants, this consumes very less amount of water.
Correct.
So we can see it in the Badla Solar Energy Park in Rajasthan. So as you know, it is a desert and it has high insulation and highest potential of power generation. It uses minimal water.
Correct.
So, and also like with regard to the economic benefits, not only from apart from reducing the import bills, it will also create jobs.
Correct.
For example, Surya Mitra scheme, as the ma'am told, and it can also be integrated with agriculture.
Correct,
PM
correct.
Kusum scheme,
Correct.
agrivoltaics.
Correct.
So if there is an arid land which is not suitable for cultivation of crops throughout the year, let's say for example in South India, the rain-fed areas. So this can be one the kind of insurance for the farmers to generate some income.
Correct. Very good.
During the non-monsoon seasons. And you can also mention some facts like India has the lowest solar energy tariffs in the world, 2 to 2.5 rupees
Correct.
per unit. So that you can mention. And I think like we need to mention the way forward also. So right now, like we are dependent on the other countries for importing the photovoltaic cells, mainly on China, etc.
Right.
So like Atmanirbhar with regard to solar photovoltaics. So maybe that can be a better conclusion if we are like willing to link it to Atmanirbhar Bharat, or since the question is asking for economic benefits, I'm talking about that also.
Sure, but one general thing what we should always keep in mind, the dangerous precedence is if we add. I'm not telling. Sir has told very beautiful points, but usually when I evaluate answers of geography, what I see is when you add too much of facts, it will become GS3. So be very careful of that. Okay, yes, here and there you can sprinkle definitely, but don't forget using geographical keywords. Geographical keywords like energy security, accessibility, availability, affordability. These are geographical keywords that should be reflected in your answer. One. Second, don't add too many programs. Here and there, one or two is fine, as ma'am told or sir told. If you add too many programs, it gives the angle of governance. So be very, very careful in geography not to make it GS2 or GS3. It should have that purity of geography as a subject. Just have that in your mind. Okay. Very good point, sir. Shall we proceed? The last, the seventh question is again, this is a new trend that they are doing in geography, that they bring disaster management questions and they ask about the disaster. Last year they had asked about cloudburst. This year they are asking about tsunamis. Okay. So straightforward again, what are tsunamis? Tsunami is a Japanese word which means arbor waves. They are mainly formed along the coastline when the long seismic oceanic waves break. Okay, that is what are tsunamis. Obviously, you have to show the diagram. Two diagrams should come. One, the mechanism of occurrence of tsunami has to be shown. That diagram should come where you are showing a sea where waves are going, hitting the coastline, and they stand up. When the waves stand up, that is what is known as tsunami. So that diagram should come. The second is you have to draw the world map and show the ocean and ocean convergence. That ocean and ocean convergence is the zone of formation of tsunami. So, Kamchatka, okay, the Kamchatka earthquake that has happened along the Pacific Ocean has resulted in tsunamis that has gone to Hawaiian Islands. So, on that remark, they're asking this question. So, I'm not telling that you have to bring that. If you bring that, that is very good. If you have read the newspaper, you can obviously write that. But what is very important is draw the world map, show the ocean and ocean convergence boundary, and show the vulnerability map of tsunami along that convergence. That is very, very important, and be careful with that. Alright, so explain with examples, obviously the same ocean and ocean convergence. What are their consequences? The consequences would be all the drastic measures that we discussed in the sea level rise only. What are the consequences? You can talk about what happens with respect to coastal communities. You can talk about what happens with respect to tourism. You can talk about what happens with respect to agriculture. You can talk about what happens with respect to groundwater, with respect to saltwater intrusions into the groundwater. And you can talk about with respect to the coastal marine destruction. That is, whatever habitats are there along the coastline will get destroyed permanently. And you can give the case study of 2004 Indian tsunami and its effect on Great Nicobar Islands. Okay, so this is one way I thought a pretty direct, straightforward questions that you can address. Sir and ma'am, please, if you have any.
Good GS question.
Again, a very direct and
direct
question. So these are the 4 10 markers of geography. I think then now you can take over, ma'am.
So the next question is from Indian Society. How does smart city in India address the issues of urban poverty and distributive justice? So It is under the topic urbanization in paper 1. So here we can analyze this question mainly from how the urban areas are unequal. Okay, in what aspects? Like there was a survey recently released by SBI Inequality Index. So according to this SBI's report, a major section of urban poverty, though they have overcome the barrier of financial constraints, there is still poverty when it comes to multidimensional aspects. So what those multidimensional aspects could be, we can analyze it from majorly 4 or 5 parameters. One could be the class differences, like we can identify different stakeholders in urban areas and how inequality is existing in this, to which smart city could be a solution. So let's say class differences, or the difference between the rich and poor, how the urban design currently doesn't do justice to the poor segments of the society. This is one area to be covered. Then we can talk about gender differences, like most of the urban areas are not women friendly, especially when it comes to safety concerns, or even when it comes to transportation for work. So gender differences is something which needs to be addressed, and it would come under distributive justice. And next we talk about various professions or occupations done in Indian society. In the urban areas, we have people working in different areas, and of late, due to the emergence of quick commerce, we see a new segment called gig workers who have come to picture. How smart city is going to do justice to different occupation groups in the society. Plus we can also give angles to regional setups. Let's say some areas in the city where rich or elites are staying, what kind of smart city should be developed where resources are distributed not only to one section but to different areas. So if we analyze it from this perspective, we can see how smart city is addressing ideas of housing. Like most of the concept in smart cities is talking about smart housing, where the drainage system, like how sir mentioned in Harappan civilization, it was planned. Smart cities would be basing on all the basic amenities of sewerage, sanitation, drinking water connectivity available. So this would address the class differences and region differences in urban areas. We can talk about various gender differences here. For example, when we talk about smart mobility or accessibility to very safe public transport will make easy for women in the area to move about and have economic independence. So gender gap that exists would also be filled in this case. We can also talk about environment justice when it comes to smart cities. The reason being, any urban area that floods in the modern times, we see that most of the areas that are downtrodden or areas that are kind of slum, they are the ones that get inundated, and rehabilitating them is a kind of late priority or is not done on a timely basis. So they are becoming victims of the kind of floods, or even when we take heat wave, this is a reality. So we can talk about this idea of smart city will be climate smart too. So climate smart cities are going to eradicate the problem of poor people getting victimized by climate related disasters. Then next one, it comes to social infrastructure. So smart cities would also have a component of accessible education and accessible health components. Again, an unequal parameter that can be measuring urban areas. Then when it comes to allocation of resources as well, for example, in monetary terms, there are many components in smart city which will talk about rehabilitating the people into proper houses. So funding to equitable justice will be done here. So with this, we can just conclude by telling how a model of smart city that was adopted in Ahmedabad about a concept called parametric insurance. So here the concept of distributive justice of tackling to gig employees. So if it floods or if it is a heat wave, gig workers are impacted the most. So to compensate for the wage loss in heat waves, we are having the concept of parametric insurance, which was introduced as a part of Ahmedabad Smart City mission. So this could probably give a good conclusion to your answer. And starting off with the factual details that only 3.5% of climate finance usually reaches the urban poor. So these statistics would try to introduce you to the gravity of the problem of how unequal the urban areas are and how smart city could be a better solution to it. Sir, if you'd like to add anything to this.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
I would like to add 1 or 2 points.
Hmm.
Firstly, it is the 10th anniversary of Smart City Mission.
Yes, correct.
2015
15 to 2025.
These anniversaries,
Very true.
they are very important
Correct.
when it comes to UPSC.
Very true,
10th,
yeah.
25th, 50th and all. They are inspired by this. And
Right.
ma'am, you told about the parametric insurance, that was a very good point. I would like to add on to it a bit. And in smart city missions, it also has one very important element. See, whenever the cities are being developed, there will be displacement of the marginalized sections of
Marginalized
society.
sections. True.
So they have to pay the price of the development. But in smart city missions, one of the important point is in situ development of slums.
True.
So, for example, Ahmedabad smart city mission that you mentioned, and it also has the element of affordable housing. And now we can see the integration
Correct.
of PM Awas
Awas
Yojana, the
Yojana,
urban element,
urban.
along with the smart city missions. And also, we also need to add upon the inclusive infrastructure that is being created, whether it is in Tumkur or in Chennai. We have one specific policy, that is the government, the local body or the government of Tamil Nadu. They have come up with one very important idea, that whatever the development they do in the Chennai Smart City project, they'll give the first priority to the pedestrians.
Okay.
Pedestrian first planning. So by that way, they are going to encourage the non-motorized transport, which is also environmental friendly. And also, like as you mentioned about the environmental justice, I think we can also talk about the indoor solid waste management project, which has made Indore as one of the cleanest cities of India.
Correct.
So that will prevent especially the vulnerable sections like the slum dwellers, etc., from the environmental hazards and also from the menace of the diseases.
Correct.
So the health costs are increasing, out of pocket expenditure are increasing, and this is one thing which can be added.
Yes. So it will also address the solid waste problems that urban areas are facing, and the social inequality between the rack pickers and how they're treated in the society. Correct. So that would be a value addition to this.
Ma'am, the question was discussed comprehensively. I don't have any value additions to make. My just a small observation in the entire society questions, how the society questions has evolved. As you know, the society questions, there will be 6 questions asked every year, and 75 marks comes from society. Usually, the society questions were on predictable pattern, like caste system. There will be one, salient features of Indian society, globalization, secularism, communalism, and linguistic this thing. So it was always on predictable lines. But the last year and this year, we can see that society has gone towards social justice. If you take 2024 questions, they asked 3 questions. One is, what is the difference between gender equity and equality? The second is socio-economic development and how collaboration between government, private and NGOs together will assure socio-economic development. One more question was how underprivileged sections are not getting benefits out of affirmative actions. These were 3 questions that were asked. These questions are actually from social justice in paper 2. That they're asking this in society of paper 1. That means that they purposely are doing it. They want to break the trend of predictability in society. So that is one that has already been done, because now, looking at this question, see, 3 questions are from social justice they have taken here. One, as ma'am has told, smart city, urban poverty and distributive justice. It is actually a social justice. And the 19th question and the 20th question, as you can see, the 19th talks about environmental protection coming in conflict with poor people. That is again a social justice one. The 20th question is tribal development, how it is a dilemma between rehabilitation and displacement. Look at this. All the 3 questions again point towards social justice. Now, the reason why I've told everything is, one, obviously the pattern has been broken, but identifying the pattern is one thing and practicing the questions for the next year is another. Now, in this social justice questions, you have to not write social justice answers, you have to write society answers. That is the challenge. That is where ma'am will help you out. So that is one thing that I identified with respect to the pattern of society. Ma'am, please carry on.
Yeah.
And ma'am,
Yes, sir.
Like with regard to the question number 9 and 20, I'm seeing one more trend. That is, they are trying to integrate the history with society.
True.
So
Yeah.
these 2 questions, like they symbolize there's a synergy between history and society.
Correct.
Like whether it is the tribal development,
Correct.
displacement
Yeah.
and rehabilitation, the issue of tribal integration that we faced in the post-independence
Post-independence. Right.
the approach of Barrier Relevant and also
Nehru.
Jawaharlal Nehru with regard to
Gurye,
tribal
yeah.
Panchil
Correct.
and the various the constitutional provisions we have for the
Tribal
development
population.
of tribals,
True.
whether it is 5th or 6th schedule, FRA, PESA, all these things. So that is one more thing. And with regard to the question number 9, the ethos of civil service in India stand for combination of professionalism and nationalistic consciousness.
True.
And the second part, like that is the nationalistic consciousness.
Correct.
So there is something which has the influence of history.
True.
So like please proceed, ma'am.
Yeah. So yes, sir, you can go ahead with the next question. Like 8th one is okay. Okay, so this 9th question, probably a combination of modern Indian history and ethics from Indian society perspective. So they're talking about combination of professionalism and nationalistic consciousness. So as we see that any civil servant is a part of the society. So whoever goes into the government is also a microcosm of Indian society in itself. So it is talking about how professionalism and nationalistic consciousness should be a part of civil services, and it has to be elaborated. So if we see here the concept of nationalistic consciousness, it's also part of a syllabus about how freedom movement is going ahead. It's also to build an idea of patriotism, a concept of love towards the nation, and this angle acting as a motive for the bureaucrats to perform to their best angle. So what all could be the nationalistic consciousness we have? What Indian society's ideal stands for? Probably secularism, the concept of egalitarianism that our scriptures and our kind of Rig Vedic society, Sangam age, have all spoken about. So nationalistic consciousness usually come from this idea. At the same time, we can also include the concept of professionalism told by Basavanna, that Kaya Kave Kailasa, or work is worship. So with these angles, we can try to elaborate how Indian society historical ideas of how the ideas of, we can say, 79th year of independence, and the prime minister stressing on every Indian's contribution. And I think this also could be related to Sir operation in Sindoor, where the idea of national consciousness was given in entire India altogether. So it could be a combination of professionalism from our religious ideas and also as a society together. Anything in addition,
And,
sir?
Since they have specifically mentioned nationalist consciousness, I would
Yeah.
like to bring out the historical angle of it.
True.
So, like as you all know, the history of civil services introduced in 1833 in India.
As a steel
And
frame too.
1853, Indians were allowed, and Satyendra
Correct.
Nath Tagore being the first Indian. And during the freedom movement, the moderates, they demanded the Indianization of civil services.
Correct.
Because the Indians issue, only Indians would be able to understand it better, not a
Correct.
foreigner
Yeah.
coming from England. And also, we can talk about how the civil services has been able to uphold the unity and integrity of the nation, especially during the integration of the princely states in the post-independence times.
Correct.
For example, the role of VP Menon, who acted as the
Hmm.
advisor of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, he played a very important role in convincing various princes to sign the instrument of taxation. So his contribution, maybe was one of the key reason why Patel was stating that civil service was the steel frame of the nation. And also the developmental roles they played, starting from the 5-year plans, and also we can bring about the role of CEC Sukumar Sen, the
Correct.
first Chief Election Commissioner of India, being the civil servant. I was able to lay a strong foundation for the free and fair elections in India. Like he served as a CEC during the first 3 general elections,
General elections.
52, 57 and 62. So that is one more contribution. And also the democratic accountability, the sense of vision, justice, equality, and the roles they play during the disasters especially, that can also be added. So the
Yeah.
nationalistic conscious means the concept of servitude,
Servitude. Yeah.
and also the duty compliance. And we can give the example of the Wayanad floods,
Yeah.
and how the DC Megashri, she was able to play an instrumental role in the rescue efforts.
Rehabilitation efforts.
So
True.
you can give this as an example for the professionalism,
Professionalism.
and also
True.
the kind of nationalist consciousness. So you can mention the quotes like "Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas." So
Coined
all these
by-
things can
correct.
be brought about with the help of the civil servants playing a instrumental
role.
role in that regard. 10th question, ma'am.
Yeah.
Globalization, your area.
So this question on is directly from paper 1, globalization, impact of globalization on Indian society. So the question goes as, do you think that globalization results in only an aggressive consumer culture? Justify your answer. So it is asking our opinion about whether you're right in agreeing to the fact that globalization result only an aggressive consumer culture and there is no positive points out of it. So whatever stance we are taking, we should be able to justify it. So I think there would be a viewpoint here where it's not only an aggressive consumer behavior, it is also something that's leading to a lot of positive impact on Indian society. So when it is talking about aggressive behavior, we can talk about how brands are advertising their products in India of late. So the brand advertising is something that is concept of socialization and how consumers are influenced by the current culture. So this is one of the reasons why we tell this aggressive consumerism might not be something in favor of Indian society, society. And in this all conversation, we can see the major role of social media. So social media now is a new way to advertise people, and how very small information and how the concept of data that is into the hands of many organizations, it is leading to advertising in a very personalized manner. So this aggressive consumer culture is an angle, or is getting more aggressive because of the concept of data becoming the new oil currently. Also, there is a concept that has become a trend in the modern world called instant gratification of needs. So this is, we can rightly term it as a culture, because there was a time when Indian society and the generations used to have a lot of patience. We would probably, if we want to shop something, we would go to the shop, think of it, purchase things, visit multiple places. But all of this came up, changed with the coming up of e-commerce sites, where you order it, product will be delivered at your doorstep. And now we got a new addition to it called quick commerce. So quick commerce is like, will fulfill your needs in just 10 minutes. This is also is a result of globalization, whereas all these products were available in US society and Western society long back, but it's a new introduction to our society. So definitely it is not something that is helping us to save better and try to have a sustainable lifestyle. Next comes the concept of fast fashion, where with every single trend and the new ideas coming up are reaching the people in a rapid time scale, making fast fashion a need of the hour. So ultimately, from the Indian society perspective, we can talk about this as a concept of homogenization of culture. Like, we are becoming one with the global culture, giving up many of the concepts of being unique in our own way. So this is half part of the argument, telling like how aggressive consumer culture is a reality. On the other hand, if we focus that is it only relating to aggressive consumer behavior, we could definitely tell no, because if you see, there are many occupations which have been coming to picture due to this kind of urbanization, which has led to lifting many people out of poverty. We could take the example of gig workers, we could take the example of students who are working as gig workers and contributing to their economic growth of the family, doing their social responsibilities, plus taking care of their education. At the same time, as an Indian consumer, we didn't have much alternatives and choices before, but this globalization is giving us opening ideas or many kinds of concepts, which is not just Western, but also modern. We can talk about the concept of gender equality, which is definitely a part of ancient Indian culture, but how the idea became a reality is due to globalization of ideas. We can also talk about the middle class. So middle class have been a major component of Indian society, and the rising middle class aspirations is reflected in the aggressive consumer behavior, which is not so negative in itself. So this is, we can, if you put a positive argument of this globalization, we can talk about it as hybridization of culture and not just homogenization. If you would be aware, we now have Barbie dolls which are decorated in Indian attires. We have Mek Aloo Tikki, which is like burger with Indian flavors. So this is what we call hybridization as a culture. And if you see, there was a very viral social media hack recently about kanji. Kanji was a traditional Indian drink. Now there are MNCs pitching to make bottled versions of kanji. So when we talk about this is a consumer preference, then definitely this answer could be proven that it's not just an aggressive consumer behavior, it is justifying the proving urban class aspirations. So boosting your answers with some recent examples would do a lot of justification. And as it's just a 10-marker question, I would feel that balancing between the ideas is better rather than taking one opinionated stand on this question. Sir, if you want to add something.
It was comprehensive enough. No?
Yes, sir.
I feel that was more than enough.
Okay.
As ma'am told, any opinion-based questions, you should be very balanced. What she has told is rightly said. Hybridization or globalization should be the conclusion. All right. Yes, a case study of urban clap, how that urban clap can convert any skill into a economic tool. That aspect you can tell in a good way as globalization. Then talking about the aggressive consumer culture, talk about the predatory pricing, talk about the monopolistic tendencies among the few billion tech companies, talk about the materialistic push towards materialism and material goals. That is actually one more aspect that you can talk, because we are talking with respect to society. So apart from that, I think she has covered comprehensively.
Sir, can we add this the influencer economy?
100%, 100% you can.
We can mention that as
Yes.
Influencer economy, basically they are influencing our choices in a way. So that is obviously aggressive consumer culture. Yes.
11th question. It is from modern Indian history. And this year, we can see UPSC planning for inclusive justice with regard to history, taking
Yeah.
one question from every topic. So all this while, there used to be some questions from modern India and alternating questions from post-independence and world history. But this year, it's a different trend. They are trying to touch upon every topic in the syllabus so that we people, I mean the aspirants, don't leave behind any topic. I mean this post-independence and the world history, they are the part of, they are the kind of neglected topics in the syllabus. Uh, Now let's start with the 11th question. Mahatma Jyotirao Phule's writings and efforts of social reforms touched issues of almost all subaltern classes. Discuss. So we can write the introduction about Jyotirao Phule being the middle class intellectual, the pioneer of the socio-religious reforms, and the person who made the emancipation of the oppressed classes as the center of his life. And he laid the foundation of anti-caste and anti-patriarchal and also the pro-subaltern thinkings during the 19th century. And now the subheading that we can create after the introduction is his writings, efforts of social reforms. So firstly, we need to talk about his efforts against the caste hierarchies and the Brahminical dominance in the society. So there, since the question is explicitly asking about his writings, we have to mention his books. So here, I would like to mention about a book called as Gulam Giri, which he authored in the year 1873. There, he'll talk about two important aspects. The firstly, he'll try to draw the parallels between uh, the oppressed classes in India and the slavery system in America. Because in India, the oppressed classes, mostly the bonded laborers and all, they belong to the lowest strata of the society. So he'll try to draw the parallels between both these systems. So the comparative analysis kind of a thing. And secondly, in this book, Gulam Giri, he'll also elaborate upon how the Brahminical, the oppressed classes from the socio-economic and political, uh, getting their share with regard to society, social, economic, and political aspirations. So this can be the first point. Secondly, he was the advocate of the women's rights. So he fought against the female infanticide, the opposition to the widow remarriage. He was an ardent supporter of the widow remarriage. He was an ardent supporter of the girl education. And as we can see in the Varna system, women were left out from the education. Women and Shudras, they were not allowed to be educated and they were not allowed to be visiting the public places. There was restrictions on their mobility. So he was the one who established the first girls' school in Pune in 1848. So that was a landmark event. And he also established kind of shelter homes for the women belonging to the upper caste so that they are protected from the social stigmas. So earlier, usually the women belonging to the upper caste were forced to perform sati. So this was prevalent among the upper section. So in order to prevent them from socially getting stigmatized socially, he established these kind of shelter homes. So these are the points which we can add with regard to his advocacy of women rights. And we can also talk about his peasant and agrarian concerns. So he wrote one book called as Shet Karyacha Ashud. So the cultivator's whipcord. And in that book, he'll talk about how the exploitative land revenue policies of Britishers, the various kinds of land revenue policies like Zamindari, Rayatwari, etc., how it will lead to exploitation of the peasants. And he'll also elaborate upon the exploitation by the intermediaries like the peasants, the money lenders, sorry, not the peasants, the money lenders, zamindars, etc. As a result, there has been, what do you say, landlessness rising among the peasants and tenants being exploited. He'll elaborate upon all these aspects. And he'll also talk about the upliftment of Shudras and Atishudras. Atishudras is a term used to refer to the Dalits or the depressed classes. So he was the one who promoted the debates and discussions, the intercaste marriages, intercaste dinings, intercaste exchanges. Just like Akbar organized Ibadat Khana, he also organized the intercaste dialogues. That is one thing. And he also asked the non-Brahminic educated masses to reject the rituals and to follow rationalistic principles. So this is one thing. And he was the one who emphasized upon universalism and humanism. He was not, I mean, his ideals and principles were not just against any particular caste, and rather he was elaborating upon considering human beings as humans and giving them, according them with basic rights, irrespective of which varna or which gender you belong to. You wanted to accord them with equal kind of rights. So, like, he was advocating equality of all the oppressed groups. So these are the 5 important parameters, like advocacy of women rights and his opposition of caste hierarchy, his voice for the peasants and the cultivators, and also his works towards upliftment of Shudras and Atishudras, and his emphasis on universal and humanism. These are the 5 important points which you can mention. And you can also mention one more contemporary literature, that is by Tarabai Shinde, was a contemporary of Jyotirao Phule. So she was also the part of Satyashodhak Samaj. And I missed out one point, I'm sorry. Like Satyashodhak Samaj, he established with a deliberate intent of being the voice of the oppressed section, promote the concept of egalitarian society, promote the equality, all these things. And Tarabai Shinde, she wrote one more book called as Stree Purush Tulana, the comparative analysis of men and women. And this book brings out a very critical aspect of the patriarchal system and the patriarchal dominance in the Indian society. So these points can summarize the answer for this question. And towards the conclusion, you can also write how Jyotirao Phule and his ideals shaped and laid the platform for the future Ambedkarite movement towards the emancipation of the oppressed classes. And you can mention the statement of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, where he'll praise Jyotirao Phule as the pioneer of the social justice in India. So, this, I hope, will summarize all the relevant points with regard to Jyotirao Phule and his contributions to the society. Sir and ma'am,
Very
would like
beautifully
to
answered. No additions.
None. Sir, one small, I
Yes, ma'am.
think there was a movie recently released on Jyotirao Phule, and
Yes.
it had created a lot of controversy as well. Probably
I
that
think
is why
that is
they
the
have
inspiration behind
chosen
this particular question.
question altogether. True, maybe another
Movie,
idea
ma'am?
of. I don't recall the name,
Mahatma
but
Phule.
but there was a movie. I had
Alright.
read about the controversy surrounding it. So I think movies are inspiring UPSC a lot to ask questions, sir.
Even Kit Kat papers introduced.
Kit
them
Kat
once upon a
also,
time.
yeah.
Okay, let us proceed with the discussion of question number 12. Trace India's consolidation process during early phase of independence in terms of polity, economy, education, and international relations. So, 15 marker, and UPSC has made the aspirants' job very simple by compartmentalizing the questions. They themselves have given the subheadings
True.
on which you are expected to elaborate upon. Okay, so like first we need to talk about the post-independence situation of India. How India was riddled with mass illiteracy, poverty, unemployment, and also the communal riots accompanied with the partition, the war with Pakistan, the refugee crisis, their rehabilitation, all these things, and also the process of integration of princely states, the separatist tendencies among many rulers, how it complicated the process of integration. This can be a very valid introduction for this question. And after that, we can discuss about the polity, economy, education, and also international relations. How the early governments of post-independence India tried to formulate a broad structure and a integrated approach towards handling all these things. First, with regard to polity, you can talk about the integration of princely states, how they used various methods like the instrument of accession, privy purses, etc., democratic means like plebiscite, etc., to integrate various princely states into Union of India. And secondly, you can talk about the constitutionalism, how India, despite being a society having a lot of the caste and gender-based hierarchies, how we adopted universal adult franchisee in the very first general election. And I think like India was the first country in the world to have given the equal voting rights to women in the very first general elections. Even
Very
in the most advanced societies of the West, like in England or in America,
USA too.
these
Correct.
rights were not conferred upon the women.
They had to be fought
So,
for
Yes, they had to fight for that, but in India, that was
by
given.
default.
So maybe it was the legacy of the nationalist struggle that we entered
Correct.
upon, and the vision of the leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, Subhash Chandra Bose, and also Jawaharlal Nehru, etc. And thirdly, we can talk about the federal structure with strong center in order to counter the separatist
Balance.
tendencies and the future balkanization of the
Indian.
provinces, as like the world was going through that process during the First World War, and also after the Second World War. Many newborn countries, the third world countries, fighting amongst themselves, and the process of balkanization was ongoing. So we learned the lesson from this, and we integrated the process of the model of the federal structure with a strong union. And also, we can talk about the democratic consolidation. How? So, under the leadership of Sukumar Sen, the election commission was able to conduct free and fair elections that laid the foundation for the future elections of India, and a very strong foundation, and which helped us gain the international legitimacy, because the West was full of skepticism about India's continuation as a democracy. They thought India would break up into multiple pieces given the level of diversity we had. So this laid a very important foundation, political foundation. And we can also talk about the reorganization of the provinces, because the reorganization will entail the first thing, the education, the vernacular education, the most importantly. Secondly, it is also about providing administration to the people in the language which they can understand. So making people as the partners of the administrative process. This was something which was missing during the British rule. The administrative language was English, and at the time of independence, we had around 85% illiteracy. So this was one of the promise of the freedom movement. So this will consolidate the polity part of the answer. Now we can proceed to economy part. And the first point can be the planning model that we embraced, the 5-year plans, the setting up of the planning commission, all these things inspired by the Soviet planning model, the 4-year plans of Soviet, which they adopted during 1920s. And Nehru, he followed the models of socialism. He was a very good admirer of the socialistic ideals. And we also know the Nehru's version of socialism as Nehruvian socialism. So the blend of socialism as well as the democratic principles. And secondly, we can talk about the establishment of large-scale industries, the public sector enterprises, and also the big infrastructural projects that was taken up. The construction of the very big dams that can support the power generation as well as the irrigation, as well as the drinking water needs of the people. Like, for example, the Bakranangal Dam, the Hirakud Dam, etc., as well as the very big steel plants like Bhilai, Bokaro, etc. And Nehru even termed them as the temples of modern India. So, like, that brings out the vision he had towards, vision he had behind promoting these, establishment of these, taking up these infrastructural development projects. And later, we can also talk about another important economic aspect, that is the land reforms. So, India inherited a semi-feudal structure where majority of the land holdings were controlled by the intermediaries, like Zamindars, the money lenders, Jyotirao, they controlled majority of land holdings in India. And these land reforms, like the abolition of Zamindari, the tenancy reforms, the modernization of land records, the promotion to cooperative farming, all these things played a very important role in economically promoting the economic equality among Indians. And with regard to the education, we can see the establishment of various higher educational institutions like IIT starting from 1951, IIM starting from 1961, AIMS starting from 1956, and the various centers of research and development like CSIR, Baba Atomic Research Council, promotion to Tata Institution, that is what do we call as IISc, and all these things. And also the government of India took the measures to promote mass literacy by promoting adult literacy campaigns, promoting the education of women, all these things. And also there were approaches towards using education as a tool for the cultural integration, promoting Hindi as a national linked language. Not the national language, let me be clear, a linked language, a common linked language as a substitute to English. Because English is a, what do you call, it's a remnant of the past. It is the symbolic of the colonial exploitation. Since it was the early years of freedom, just like we hated British, we also hated their language, English. And the urge to replace English with something Indian was very prominent among Indians. And this is one thing. And establishment of Sahitya Academy, Lalit Kala Academy, and also the NCRT, all these things will suffice for the point how the post-independence governments work towards promoting education. And with regard to the international relations, we can talk about the NAM, non-alignment movement, along with Egypt, Indonesia, Sukarno of
Sukarno.
Indonesia, Tito of Yugoslavia, etc. NAM was one landmark thing which India adopted. Secondly, we can talk about the Panchsheel agreements with China. So there was a betrayal later, but these can be a very foundational principle with regard to peaceful coexistence as a neighboring country. And we can also talk about India's support to decolonization efforts in many parts of Asia as well as in Africa. So, and we can also talk about how India played as the role of a very prominent role in the conflict resolution. Like, for example, the Korean crisis or the Hungarian crisis. Nehru acted as a very important negotiator between the two parties, and he was helping them to arrive at a middle ground, which did not allow these problems to be escalated to the Third World War. The Cold War remained cold mainly in the initial phases due to the contribution of Chacha Nehru. And we can also talk about how India acted as a major force apart from the two poles, that is led by USA and USSR, uniting the G77 countries. That is one thing. And towards the conclusion, you can also mention that the statement of Chacha, where he stated that India will not align itself with any bloc, for we believe in friendship with all. So we adopted the path of balancing, getting benefits from both the blocs, the Soviet-led bloc and also the America-led bloc. So that was the approach. And there were some challenges to all this process, like the political integration, economic integration, etc. Like you can mention about the war with China, the war with Pakistan, whether it is in 1947 with regard to Kashmir and 1965, we were under attack by them. And the war with China, the annexation of Tibet by China. So all these things are little setbacks with regard to our policies. Okay. So having mentioned all these things, you can conclude your answer. Sir and ma'am, like, do you like to add anything to it?
I think you've done a good job, sir. They've asked a bird's eye view of post-independence syllabus. So I think you've covered it comprehensively.
Entire post-independence syllabus can be summarized as an answer for this.
Just in 15 marks. Sir, only one point was like India had always trusted the global institutions. Like we had, like United Nations, we have contributed in the growth. Yes, Bandung Conference. And it also was some way in regional development. Like the policy was about establishing industries in areas where development is very less. So it would lead to socio-economic development. Yeah, balanced regional development angle. That's it, sir. All else, yes, it was the entire syllabus.
I think like we can link it to the present contemporary schemes like aspirational district program.
Correct.
Nehru was the one, like maybe his ideals have inspired these things. Okay. So let us proceed with the discussion of question number 13. That is, the French Revolution has enduring relevance to the contemporary world. Explain. So initially we have to talk about the French Revolution, how it was something more than overthrowal of monarchy. It is not just about overthrowing monarchy and establishing a different institution. It is something more than that, because it is something that led to the birth of modern consciousness. This revolution gave us the ideals of nationalism, secularism, liberty, equality, fraternity, and these ideals have inspired many national movements and also various constitutions across the world, starting from USA. So this can be your introduction. Later, you can also talk about its relevance. The subheading can be the relevance of French Revolution to the contemporary world. So first, you can talk about its contribution to democratic and the popular sovereignty. Because before French Revolution, we can see the divine rights of the king. And that concept got replaced by the sovereignty of the people. So king derives authority through the collective will of the people or the collective power of the people. So that was something which was enshrined in the French Revolution. And we can mention that the ideals of French Revolution inspired the Constitution of America in a sense, and also the many constitutions of Latin America. For example, the Simon Bolivar's fight, it was also inspired by the French Revolution. And even in Indian society, we adopted the universal adult franchise, the Article 326 of our Constitution, which enshrines, the basis of this is equality. One person, one vote. There were many kings in India having There was a concept in India, Raja Pratyaksha Devata, king is God on earth. And despite having these kind of hierarchies, divisions, etc., we embraced one person, one vote concept, and that is also deeply inspired by the French Revolution's ideals. So this can be one point, how the French Revolution influenced the democratic and popular sovereignty. Secondly, we can talk about how it influenced the human rights and the justice. So the Universal Declaration of, in 1789, there was something called as Declaration of Rights of Man. So that has inspired the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948. So the underlying principles are almost the same. So you can also mention that, and also you can talk about the preamble of India, whether it is the liberty, equality, fraternity, all these concepts directly derived from the outcomes of French Revolution. And you can also talk about the South African Constitution, where the Bill of Rights in the post-apartheid period, that had a profound influence of French Revolution. And thirdly, you can talk about the concept of equality and the social reformation, social transformation. See, the French Revolution, you have to look at the social hierarchy that was prevailing in the France. Firstly, there was clergies, followed by aristocrats. They enjoyed all the privileges, having minimal responsibilities and burden. Whereas the commoners, they were forced to bear all the burden of the state, like paying taxes with minimal privileges. So this feudalistic discrimination, this was something which laid the foundation of egalitarian societies in the later times. When people started demanding equality, maybe this feudalistic privileges or the feudalistic discrimination was something that they were opposing in large scale. And also, we can talk about the revolts of the Indian peasants against the zamindars in the pre-independence times. Okay, and we can also talk about the influence of the French Revolution on the Indian freedom fighters. For example, Lala Lajpat Rai, he wrote the biographies of Mazzini. He talked about French Revolution. So Napoleon Bonaparte, he was a very influencing figure, his ideals, etc. And we can also talk about secularism and the church-state separation. So earlier, it was a church which used to control the education as well as the religion in France. But Napoleon introduced a new order where the affairs of church and state got separated, and education came under the control of the government. Till then, predominantly it was the religion-based education that was provided. In India, we had Gurukula system. Similarly, in France, the religion was under the education was under the control of religion. So French Revolution provided a very important platform in that regard, where secular education was provided to the future generations, and the church-state separation, the secular governments. That is one very important concept. And French Revolution also laid a very important platform for the unification struggles in Europe. For example, the unification of Italy or the unification of Germany. It was all driven by the seeds of nationalism laid by Napoleon Bonaparte. So Napoleon, for time being, for his own administrative convenience, he unified Westphalia. So that unification gave them the the taste of fruit of unity. And similarly, he also unified the Italian states. So that was something which inspired Cavour and even the Mazzini and Garibaldi to unify the Italian states under one country. And you can also talk about the economic reforms and the concept of meritocracy, because in the aristocracy, the privileges were transferred by birth. And in French Revolution, talent was given preference over the birth. So that is something like you can compare it with the present civil service examination, where talent is preferred over everything else. So it is Napoleon Bonaparte who laid the foundational principles of all these things. So during his rule or during his tenure, you can say the appointments to the higher positions was based on the merit rather than the births. And as you can say, if I have to quote a very important historian called as R.R. Palmer, he states that the French Revolution is the turning point in modern Indian history, where old Europe gave way to the modern world. So the concepts of divinity of the ruling order, the feudalism, all these things were abolished, and this is something that laid foundation for the egalitarian society, the aspirations of the egalitarian society. So this will suffice Like, you have plenty of points to write a wonderful answer for a 15 marker.
Sir, they also asked relevance to the contemporary world.
Yes.
So I would like to quote the example of Venezuela, Turkey, Bangladesh, where there is a demand for authoritarian regime, or probably there is a tendency of authoritarianism,
Yes.
and probably French Revolution could be an inspiration to question the status quo. Like in Venezuela, there is a single president for a very long period of time. In Turkey, there are efforts to consolidate power. So it was similar ideas against which the French Revolution had come up. So it could probably be a very relevant concept in the present day to propagate the idea of questioning culture, and also to instill the ideals of democracy once again in the contemporary world.
Yes, ma'am. And now I got one more point. Like, maybe
Yeah.
we can talk about the press freedom index.
Correct.
So where
Yeah.
the liberty of press
Press.
is at stake,
True.
stifled by the authoritarian regimes across the world. We can
Correct.
talk about that, because whether it was tennis court declaration or
Correct.
the declaration of rights of man,
Man.
it was all about the liberty.
Expression. Yeah.
So that can also be added. So we are done with the questions from the history part. Now I'll pass the baton to Sudeep sir.
All right, guys. Thank you so much, sir, for such comprehensive discussion on history. Now, let us move into the geography. Since we have already finished the 10 marker of geography, let us move into the 15 marker of geography. The 15 marker is 14, 15, 16, and 17. 4 questions of 15 marker. Let us first focus on the 14th question. Relatively difficult because conventionally they don't ask so specifically, but you can manage. I will give you the hint of how to manage this question. Let us read out the question. Give a geographical explanation of the distribution of offshore oil reserves of the world. Geographical explanation. That means you have to talk about the rocks, you have to talk about the basins, you have to talk about the geographical reasons why that petroleum and natural gas is there. So be wary of that. Next part is, how are they different from the onshore occurrences of oil reserves? Okay. Now, first, obviously, you should talk about how petroleum and natural gas is formed. Second part, you should talk about what are the geographical factors that will incentivize the formation of petroleum and natural gas offshore. Then you have to draw the world map and show where all you will find petroleum and natural gas offshore. Now here, don't think that I have not studied any book, so I don't know where is it. Common sense says you draw the world map, identify where all you have broad continental shelf. That broad continental shelf automatically means that there is petroleum and natural gas. So that is a common sense way of drawing a diagram and showing the distribution of petroleum and natural gas in the offshore regions of the world. Okay, we'll cut there. And then the fourth part is show how it is different from onshore occurrences. Okay, this last part is where it gets a little tricky. You should have the idea of anticlines and how these anticlines will help petroleum and natural gas move upwards and become onshore reserves. Okay, anyways, we'll get there. So overall, we'll start by talking about petroleum and natural gas are basically formed due to the fossilization of marine microorganisms. That is one. The second is fossilization mainly happens within basins, which are shelters of depositions or sites of deposition. Third, fossilization happens due to continuous sedimentation. When these marine organisms die, because of continuous sedimentation, the marine organisms that are dead will be covered, cut off from oxygen, hence decomposition will not happen, degradation will not happen, fossilization will happen. That fossilization over a long period of time will result in the formation of fossil fuel, and one such fossil fuel is petroleum and natural gas. So this is the first part. Then, as I told you, that you have to talk about the spatial distribution of petroleum and natural gas. That is, you should talk about different continental shelf. You talk about the any islands seated or any seas, Persian Gulf, North Sea, Alaska. You can go to Arctic Sea. You can talk about the Gulf of Mexico. You take any part of the world where there is broad continental shelf, you will have petroleum and natural gas reserves there. In India, you can talk about Mumbai High. You can talk about Krishna Godavari Basin. So these are regions offshore that are having petroleum and natural gas. So that's the first part. Now the second is, how are they different from the onshore occurrences of oil reserves? This is where, see, any petroleum and natural gas will always be formed with basins, and these basins will always be below the oceans. I have that idea. So that is how you should start. You should tell that petroleum and natural gas will be formed due to fossilization of marine organisms, and these marine organisms will fossilize in ocean basins. So once they fossilize and form petroleum and natural gas, due to compressive forces, the basins will fold. Let us say that this is a basin. So due to compressive forces, these basins will fold and come outside the oceans to form land. So when they come outside the oceans, so the basin will result in the formation of anticline. Okay, this is a syncline, this is an anticline. So as the basins will fold to become anticlines, as petroleum and natural gas are lighter compared to water, they will start rising up that anticline and they will go and deposit at the top. Okay, that is where onshore petroleum reserves are getting deposited because of the petroleum and natural gas that rises up the anticline and deposits at the top. Okay, this is one complex explanation that you have to give. It is not complex if you know the mechanism. Then you have to obviously give the examples of how this anticlines are formed. The best example is Zagros folding. This Zagros and Pontine mountains, remember, they are in Turkey and Iran. These are very important foldings. Pontine and Taurus foldings in Turkey, and Zagros and Elbrus in Iran. These are two foldings where the anticlines has resulted in petroleum coming up, and the petroleum reserves today are widely explored. These are very good examples of onshore petroleum and natural gas reserves. In India, if you take the onshore petroleum and natural gas, you have a very, very famous one, Digboy and Naharkatia. These are two onshore petroleum reserves that are there in Assam. This is in onshore reserves. How did this onshore reserve form? Again, I'm telling you, they were erstwhile part of the basins only. When these basins rose up, they created anticlines, and within the anticlines, the petroleum and natural gas rose up to form today's petroleum and natural gas reserves onshore. So this is a little complex, but you will be able to explain if you know the mechanism of it. So overall, purely a geographical question. I felt people are not having very good grip in geography will suffer a little in the second part of the question. But overall, if you have some basic knowledge, you'll be able to manage it properly. Sir and ma'am, please, if you can add any points.
So it is basically a GS question.
Yeah,
no current affairs or anything would be relevant here. You will be doing it. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Shall we proceed to the next one then? All right. All right, guys. So let us move on to the 15th question. The 15th question is applied geography. Now, one very important thing that you should know is whenever they ask you questions in applied geography, you have to develop the habit of lateral thinking. Where can it be applied? It can be applied in all aspects of life. It can be applied in urban, it can be applied in rural setting, it can be applied in agriculture, industries, any aspect of life you can apply. That is what is applied geography. Okay. So whenever they ask applied geography, lateral thinking is very important, where you bring different aspects of life and you connect it to the answer. For example, let me illustrate with this question. 15th question is, how can artificial intelligence and drones be effectively used along with GIS and RS techniques in locational and aerial planning? Okay. Now, see, they're using a lot of keywords here. When there is a lot of keywords, what you can do is, the best thing is just define all the keywords and go. Okay, that is the best way to do in geography. For example, what is GIS? What is remote sensing? What is drones? What is artificial intelligence? Okay, so basically, you can talk by defining remote sensing. Remote sensing is gathering information using sensors from satellites. Okay, that helps us understand the area at a much larger scale with minute details. That is what exactly is remote sensing. Next, what is geographical information system? Geographical information system is basically storing the data in geographical format that will help us analyze any phenomena thematically. Thematically means I can analyze what is the water map of India, what is the mineral map of India, what is the industrial map of India, what is the population map of India. See, the spatial analysis thematically is possible because of geographical information system. So first talk about remote sensing, then talk about GIS, then come to drones. What are drones? Drones basically are unmanned aerial vehicles that helps us survey a land as well as give accessibility to regions that are usually not accessible. So that is where you can talk about drones. After telling these three, how artificial intelligence will help in this drones, RIS and GIS is, drones, RIS and GIS will give you data. That artificial intelligence will use this immense amount of data in order to create patterns, predict any type of movements, and also to design policies. That is how artificial intelligence will help us complement GIS, RS and drones. This is how the initial part should come. Okay. Now, the next is how they will help in locational and aerial planning. As I told you, it's an application question. Locational or aerial planning, you can take in different realms of life. First, I'll talk about urban planning. If I talk about urban planning, we know that urban sprawl is a continuous phenomena. That urban sprawl, if that urban sprawl has to be sustainable, then you should have monitoring through GIS, through drones. That in turn will help with the help of artificial intelligence. So urban sprawl can become sustainable only if we use technology in spatial planning. So that is the first half. The second is rural setting. If you go to rural setting, the main aspect where spatial planning can be made more effective with the help of technology, that is these three, is with to overcome rural urban fringe. We know that rural urban fringe is overlapping areas where you have some type of ruralness also, where you have some type of urbanness also. So there is a lot of chaos and despair in that zone. If you want to remove the chaos and despair in that zone, that is the rural urban fringe, then this technologies like RIS, drones and GIS, drones and RS plays a very important role. So that another aspect that you should talk about. The third thing is, coming back to the rural setting only, you can talk about how this GIS and our remote sensing can help with respect to agriculture. All right. For example, we can use GIS, remote sensing and drones in order to assess the cropping patterns, in order to assess the crop damage that in turn can help you in crop insurance. So in a way, it will complement rural development as a whole by helping the development of agriculture and making agriculture more resilient to climate change or any other vagaries of the environment. So that is another aspect. The third way of thinking. So we have thought about rural areas, we have thought about agriculture, we have thought about urban areas. Now think of disaster management. How with the help of GIS, with the help of remote sensing, with the help of drones and using all their data, I can use artificial intelligence to manage disaster better. Using their data, I can forecast better. Using their data, I can help in early warning system. Using their data, I can help in rehabilitation as well as redevelopment to make sure that they can build back better and we develop more resilience to disaster. So in this way, so I've given you example of urban sprawl, I've given you example of rural urban fringe, I've given you example of cropping intensity and cropping insurance, I've given you example of disaster management. If you keep thinking, you can talk about industrial development, you can talk about governance where you can track the movement of food in food security so that there is less leakages using the same technology. So laterally, if you think, you can bring different dimensions and talk about how RIS, RS, drones and GIS together can complement and artificial intelligence can use the data to give us exactly what we need to progress. So this is overall how you should bring. But just make sure that you should bring it in a geographical way. You should not talk more in a science and technology way. That is the part here. That is where you have to talk about urban sprawl, you have to talk about rural urban fringe, you should talk about cropping patterns. That is where you should bring some geography into it. So this is my take towards the question. Sir, please do.
Sir, I think like we can add one more small point.
Sure, sir.
About environmental monitoring.
Correct.
How it can track the deforestation.
Yeah.
100%.
And how it can help us to control the forest fires.
Correct. Very true.
So that is one thing. And with regard to agriculture, like we can use the drone with a multispectral imaging lens to understand the plant health, its productivity, and we can also gauge the yield.
Correct.
And this is something which is implemented by the government of Andhra Pradesh. They have something called as a Digi Green initiative. So they are using drones and this GIS, RS data to come up with this estimation.
Nice.
Apart from that early warning system, like that is something which people usually write, and this is something which can add value to your answer.
Correct.
So that's it, sir.
Super.
So one thought is, not sure if this would be practical, but we are having many number of glacial lakes increasing due to climate change. So the instances that happened in Chitwar recently is signifying that we are not able to predict these things. So will drone be able to help us in monitoring the quantity of water in the lakes or increase in the number of lakes, because the number of lakes are increasing due to breaking up of the glacier.
Correct.
Not only the volume, but the quantity of lakes is also a concern now.
Correct.
Probably these technologies will help us to make us ready for a disaster in the Himalayan region.
100% it does. 100% it does. Managing disaster is definitely a valid point. Yes, ma'am.
And sir, like one more small thing, we can also use this drone AI for like the government of India using it for Swamitwa scheme. Where they are rewarding the property rights, so that like they are using this AI and GIS RS only for this. We can also mention that as an example.
100%. All right, guys. So I think we have discussed about this comprehensively. Let us move to the 16th question. Okay. Again, the 16th question is pretty direct questions, provided you have a very good knowledge about plate tectonics. Okay. So basically, they are asking about discuss how the changes in shape and size of continents and ocean basins of the planet take place due to tectonic movements of the crustal masses. Okay. Here, basically what they are talking about is there are three types of convergence: sea and sea convergence, ocean and ocean convergence, ocean and continent convergence, continent and continent convergence. You have to talk about how the shape in size and changes in shape and size of continents and ocean basins happen when there is first ocean and ocean convergence, when that ocean and ocean convergence goes into becoming ocean and continent convergence, when that ocean and continent convergence goes on to become continent and continent convergence. So basically, you have to talk whatever the shapes and changes happens within the continents and oceans with respect to these three phases. So from a Pangea, how the Pangea will disrupt or how it will diverge and go into different places. When it is going into different places, how first O and O convergence, that means ocean and ocean convergence happen. So when ocean and ocean convergence happen, let us say that if this is ocean, these two are oceanic boundaries and this is continent. So always you should know that ocean and ocean convergence happen. The denser plate of the ocean will subduct and get destroyed. Look at this, as it gets destroyed, the ocean plate and continental plate has now become converged. Now look at this, it has started from O and O, that is ocean and ocean convergence. Now it has gone on to become ocean and continent convergence. Now when it is ocean and continent convergence, the ocean will now subduct. When the oceanic plate will now subduct, the ocean and ocean to ocean and continent has now gone on to become ocean, continent and continent. Okay, so basically how the size and shape of the continents and oceans changes when we phase out from phase 1, that is ocean and ocean convergence, to phase 2, that is ocean and continent convergence, and phase 3 is continent and continent convergence. That elaboration should be written with clear diagrams. Okay, again a pretty straightforward question if you know plate tectonics theory properly. I think that this is a very valid question that most of the people will write this. Any additions, please do sir.
I mean, can we talk about the Great African Rift Valley?
Yes, that comes within the diverging plate boundary.
Yes, sir. Like
100%.
That will be a very good example how there is a formation of a new ocean basin.
Correct.
Because of the drifting of a Nubian plate.
Correct. Definitely we can add that here. Okay, that is part of one phase. Divergent plate boundary, third stage that is. Okay, definitely you can. Again, I'm not going into the nitty-gritties of it because it will take a lot of time to explain. I'm just giving you the framework of different types of convergence that you have to explain. And when explaining the convergence, you have to talk about the change in the shape and size. Okay, but what is very important is the three phases. It will always start with the Pangea. The Pangea will break and move into different places due to divergent plate boundary, as Pradeep Sir told. As it moves into different phases, convergence will start happening, and convergence will happen always in three stages: ocean and ocean, ocean and continent, continent and continent. When continent and continent happens, a new Pangea is formed and that cycle keeps repeating. So this is the overall idea. Anyways, so that is about the 16th one. Let us move to the 17th question. Again, second question of Indian geography that they are asking very specifically. Discuss the distribution and density of population in the Ganga river basin with special reference to land, soil and water resource. Okay. Now, usually the moment you are seeing that Ganga river basin, you are incentivized to talk in general about Ganga river basin. If you just talk about Ganga river basin is a trough filled by alluvial soil that are brought down by rivers from the Himalayas. Let us say this is the definition. Then you put the subheading as Ganga river basin and the distribution and density of population and start talking in general. You will not get more marks. Usually my students, how I train them to write is divide the Ganga river basin into spatially different zones. What you can do is first divide the Ganga river basin into three zones. The first zone is Rohilkhand plains. The second zone is Awadh plains, and the third zone is Mithila plains. Okay, so these are the three broader zones that you should break Ganga plains as. Now, if you take Rohilkhand plains, what are the water resources there? You have Ram Ganga and Yamuna. If you take Awadh plains, you have Gaggara, Gomti, Gandak. If you take Mithila plains, you have Kosi river. Then come back to all the three plains, talk about the land resources. You have alluvial soil. What is the crop being grown in Rohilkhand plains? Sugarcane. You go to Awadh plains. Again, you have alluvial soil, but they are more coarser. And what is the crop being grown? It is mainly, wheat and maize. Then go to Mithila plains. What is the soil being grown? It is silty alluvial soil. And what is the crop being grown? Sugarcane and rice. So that is how you can go from one zone, talk about the land, soil and water resources, because they are asking specifically with special reference to land, soil and water resources. So go to Mithila plains, talk about land, soil and water resources. Go to Awadh plains, talk about land, soil and water resources. Go to Rohilkhand plains, talk about land, soil and water resources. And finally, don't forget the Hooghly plains, that is the Bengal plains. There also you should talk about the land, soil and water resources. If you can touch upon in all the four plains, if you can touch upon these three points, you have got 12 points there itself. And don't forget, diagrams are compulsory, so diagram should come here also. So if you draw the diagram and give this, it will be amazing. Then at the last concluding remark, what you can do is, you can tell why these plains have the highest population in the entire country. The reason is because of the alluvial soil, very high land carrying capacity, fertile soils, agricultural production is very high, connectivity and accessibility is very high. Because of these natural advantages, automatically the population is attracted there, and that has the highest population in India. So overall, you can finish on these lines. Again, very easy question. Okay. So overall, this wraps up the geography questions. What I felt is, as Sir told in the beginning, we are moving towards the economic and socio-geography. That is one thing you should have in your mind. But the questions in economic and socio-geography are not that difficult. It is very easy, provided that you practice a lot of questions. Second, you should not think that there is one book in socio-economic geography. If I read, I'll be able to write good answers. That will never happen. Practice a lot of questions. Read one base book for socio-economic geography and keep practicing a lot of answers. You will get an hang of it. Third, diagrams is compulsory in all the questions of geography. Diagrams should come, and there has to be a diagram in every question of geography. Don't forget that. So overall, this is my take on geography, and I hope that all my students, as well as all students who have written mains exam, have done good, especially in geography. So this is about my take. I'll now give the baton to ma'am, who's going to deal with the rest of the questions.
Thank you, sir. So the next question would be, how do you account for the growing fast food industries given that there are increased health concerns in modern society? Illustrate your answer with Indian experience. So we could, this is not so different from the previous question on globalization, and the fast food culture is kind of a byproduct of globalization. So I think there is a very good statistics coming up from National Family Health Survey 5, which tells that 44 million men in India and 44 million women in India and 22 million men in India are obese. So this is the very recent statistics that we have got, which is highlighting how the obesity challenge India is facing, and most of it is dedicated to the fast food culture. So as it is from the Indian society perspective, we should be able to give certain dimension on the institutions of Indian society, like family structure. So if we see here, earlier, the traditional division of labor would be focusing that a woman in the household should be doing the cooking work. So now, due to the changing family structure and the increasing nuclear family tendencies in areas, we see to it that both husband and wife would be working, which is what we in a technological term called dual income households. So in this gap, a woman might not be having the time to cook for the household, and fast food culture and quick commerce will be something which is acting as a band-aid solution to this problem. So the changing family structure is one of the reasons why we are seeing a growth in fast food culture. At the same time, we are seeing that there is a lot of population in India that is young and aspirational. And to them, the role of social media and the peer pressure also will encourage them to consume foods that are trending. For example, matcha coffee, matcha latte, that is now becoming very popular, is something that can be called about an aspirational and young idea of getting influenced and becoming easy victims of fast food culture. Then we can talk about food. So food is not just in the present context a thing that is to fulfill our body requirements or to fill our stomachs. It is also an agent of socialization. So if you see many meetings and conferences, they are no more restricted to boardrooms. They are many a times hosted in the hotels or any restaurant. So development of, let's say, group developmental activities are taken place in good eating places. So this has become an area of socialization. So just to meet people, we are no more restricting ourselves to households. We are going to restaurants, which is again not so healthy way of sustaining food sources. If this is the urban story, we can also talk about aggressive marketing tendencies in the rural areas. So though rural areas, the family structure is intact, we can talk about accessibility and also affordability of certain fast food. For example, the packaged products like noodles or chips that are very easily available in the rural domain is something that is changing our food culture. And also we are seeing the increasing idea of millets losing their values in the rural systems. Same notion of fast food culture becoming very popular. And this again, we can link to the concept of cultural hybridization. The reason being, many of the fast food chains were not easily eatable by every section of Indian society due to cultural restrictions. Let's say there are certain sections of society which are very particular about only pure vegetarian. We could have seen an effort done by Zomato recently to create vehicles which will be delivering only pure veg items. So the cultural changes that the fast food giants are doing to adapt to Indian societies is also a reason for this health parameter. And when we are talking about this concept already, we should not miss a topic called hidden hunger. There was a time when Indian society was usually regarded as undernourished and the children were not healthy, stunting and growth parameters were stunted. This was a major concern. But now we still have malnutrition, but it is in the form of hidden hunger. Micronutrition, very important for younger generation, is not being fulfilled by the food culture. So definitely food and culture goes hand in hand together with the Indian society structures. So the concept of adopted versions of MNCs to this could be a very good idea. So please include some very relevant contemporary examples that will be grabbing the attention, because it is able to link the theory with what reality you're seeing in the daily life. Yes, sir. Any suggestions?
Ma'am, I would like to add one or
Yeah.
two facts. The first thing is about the number of obese
Hmm.
in India. ICMR came up with a survey
Okay.
which states in 2024, which says there are 135 million
Okay.
obese people in India, inclusive of men, women, children. everyone.
Children. Yeah.
And you can also talk about the competitive pricing that various food delivery platforms offer.
Right.
And we can also talk about how MNCs, like various food chains across the globe, like for example Popeyes or KFC, we just travel down the street, we are able to find multiple MNCs, whether it is Subway,
Correct.
McDonald's, the Mexican food chains.
Yeah.
All these things, they are like in aggressive campaigning or aggressive marketing. And because of this aggressive marketing, many youth are feeling that the left behind mindset.
FOMO that was there in the
FOMO,
mains
yes,
last
that is
time.
one thing.
Correct.
And nowadays, like with regard to the contemporary examples, I would like to add a few things. One is the Eat Right movement promoted by the government
of India. Correct.
And Fit India movement. That is one thing
Correct.
which was highlighted in the Independence Day speech of Prime Minister itself. And there is one social media movement, Label Padega India.
Yeah, Food Farmer has hosted us.
Social
Very
media,
true. Yeah.
Influencer is. And that social media movement has led for CBSE and ICSE to promote
Exactly.
a circular asking them to display the sugar
boards
in the
Very
respective
true.
schools and colleges. We can
Right.
mention this as the
contemporary examples.
Since the
Correct.
question is demanding explicitly
Health.
with regard to the Indian context,
Right.
these three things can be very good value additions.
Yes, and there are precautionary measures to prevent the future
Very
from
true, ma'am.
getting victimized
From
by
the-
this.
During the formative years itself, we are being educated with regard
Right.
to the food habits. So you are aware of what you are
Consuming.
rather
Correct.
than falling for the marketing strategies of the various
Various
MNCs. We are aware
MNCs.
of what we are consuming.
Very true. Yes.
Yes, I think you people are covered, ma'am. But the two things happening in the society is, one, there is a fad created about different types of diets.
Yes.
Keto diet, paleo diet,
Paleo diet.
so different OMAD diet, all these things are there. That is actually skewing from the nutritional property of what is needed for Indian population. That is one. Second, there is more emphasis on ultra processed food. These ultra processed food are filled with preservatives. So that, yes, preservatives are affecting the gut microbiome of every human. That in turn is creating digestive problems, especially in Indian population again. The third is, whatever fast food is there, they are all focused on carbohydrate intensive food. They are not focusing on proteins
Protein or
or
fiber.
good fats. Yes. So again, that is another malnourishment that is happening. So we as Indians are mainly price sensitive when it comes to food, not nutrition sensitive. So that culture of label reading, that has to happen. So to increase that, as Pradeep Sir rightly told, food farmer, that person
Label
has.
Padega India campaign.
Yes, very good. That campaign is actually a very good thing that has to come in the answer. That would have added point. The second is the government itself is now putting those labels in the syllabus of NCRTs, so that in the upbringing stage itself, the students or the child should get to be aware of how to read those labels to understand what are preservatives, what are colors, what are the fats and things like that. So that is another thing. The third is, the government is planning to set up health clinics in every school. That is, if it becomes compulsory, that means the child at the very upbringing stage itself will be aware of what is good and what is bad for him or her. So I felt that this is something.
Thank you, sir. So that would be a very comprehensive idea on obesity and the fast food culture in India. Coming to the 19th question, achieving sustainable growth with emphasis on environment protection could come into conflict with poor people's needs in a country like India. Comment. So this is for 15 marks, and this is a very unique question in itself. The reason being, sustainable development growth, the SDG targets that we have, one of the component in it is poverty eradication. So we usually perceive that sustainable development will by default come with poverty eradication. But the question here is probably on a different note, asking us to think out of the box, telling that sustainable development and emphasis on environment need not always be towards poor people's needs. So to this, there was a very good book written by Ramchandra Guha about speaking tree. The name of the book is Speaking Tree, where he gives a very good idea of the difference between environmentalism. So if you see in the Western culture, environmentalism is seen as an idea of leisure, something that can be given time to only after achieving economic growth. So it comes at a later stage. But when it comes to Indian notion, we do not have the time, or probably it is an immediate need that environment concerns should be addressed with poverty eradication. And this is how India has always been. For example, you can take the lives of Rabindranath Tagore, the concept of Warrior Elvin, which was explained in this book very well. They all have been promoting this concept of upholding the poor and trying to help them to grow forward is something that will lead to environment growth and development together. So what angles we would be giving to this is the idea of certain sustainable development or pro-environment stories, which is going against the people. We can take the recent controversy with respect to Forest Rights Act, where certain forest dwellers were trying to be evacuated from the space. And though it is for forest conservation, it is somehow going against the only livelihood that the forest dwellers are having. We could take the example of mining bans that has been going on in India. Especially there was a mining in Karnataka, one of the largest in Asia, called Kudremukh Iron Ore Mining Limited. It was completely closed in the year 2010 owing to the environmental concerns. But an entire ecosystem, or we can say an entire economy that was created, which helped the local poor to find a livelihood, was totally taken out of here. And currently this entire region is a part of Bhadra Tiger Reserve. So very good environmental decision, but probably the poor people were not done the justice in this case. So this could be a great example in this comment. At the same time, we also talk about banning plastics. Banning plastic is something which is very close to environmental ideas, but many of the time plastics products are very affordable to the poor people in India, and completely removing plastic without giving in cheap or affordable alternative would go against the local population, or we can say the poor people. At the same time, solar panels are very positively an environmentally important development. At the same time, there are many concerns being raised about grazing areas or grazing lands being overtaken by solar parks especially. So this aspect, grazing lands, also is something that is against the ideas of poverty eradication. Same thing is with respect to Western Ghat rehabilitation. The story is same when it comes to coastal areas. So CRZ regulation for protecting coastal areas is also against many of the local population who will be rehabilitated for not having any infrastructure here. So if the comment is true on this notion, we would conclude the answer by telling what Ramchandra Guha used to tell, that in India, environmentalism and poverty and development has always grown hand in hand. This is how our way of growth has been. So the conclusion part would be like, roping in the local population in the movement of sustainable practices would help us to eradicate poverty. And when it comes to this concept of it, we just have to touch a bit about unequal cost of the entire activity. So unequal cost bearing would be negative for the poor population. And as it is from society dimension, we should also talk about how resource distribution for environmental needs are not always towards the poor population. We can talk about livelihood loss. Another example could be rat hole mining banned in Meghalaya, for the concern being environmental harm. It is the only livelihood that the people are having in the area, and lack of agency or participatory approach of local population in these environmental decisions also is something that probably goes against poverty. At the same time, it is not separable. For example, in India, the sustainable growth and environment growth cannot be separated from the concept of poverty. So there are many of initiatives done by the government to help the people in the sustainable area. So the focus could be probably on, by concluding, telling what Ramchandra Guha has told on inseparability of these ideas. Sir, any opinion on this? Can we add anything?
So, like, since you talked about this plastic ban,
Yeah.
we can talk about the livelihood of rack pickers.
Rack pickers, right.
So that will be affected. And for concluding lines,
Hmm.
I think we can quote Amartya Sen, where he
Correct.
told the ideals of the government should be to expand the freedom of the
Freedom.
poor
Very
rather than
true.
create the islands of affluence.
Right.
So,
Yes.
in the guise of what you call a sustainable development, the livelihood of the poor should not be compromised. So
Right.
that can be a concluding note for this discussion. And apart from that, like, you're comprehensively covered it, man.
Yes.
I feel, see, whenever in society questions is usually it is opinion based questions, you should be very, very careful in voicing your opinion. As ma'am told, yes, ma'am has told you correctly the opinion that you need to be voiced. That is, poor taking their voice into concern when it comes to environmental protection or environmentalism is very good. That is how it is. That is how it should be. In the question, when you have to structure it, first, see, it is basically two variables. They are talking about sustainable growth versus the poor, sustainable growth with the poor. So you have to first structure it, sustainable growth versus the poor. You have to give an instance how it happens. For example, I can take one is slum rehabilitation, another is slum renewal or slum beautification. If you take slum rehabilitation, for example, Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission, they took all the slum population and gave them housing outside the city. Now, when they gave them outside the city for protecting the environment, how will the poor people come to their jobs? So that is where sustainable growth did not stand with the poor. So that is one illustration that you can do on one side. On the other side, you can go ahead and tell that sustainable growth in India is always comprehensive than the West. In the West, when they say sustainable growth, it is intergenerational equity. But in India, it is intergenerational equity plus intragenerational equity. So that intragenerational equity is nothing but inclusive growth. So that is where, as ma'am told, that what is that, ma'am? Ramchandra Gua's speaking tree.
Speaking tree.
That is a very good apt example of how our sustainable growth is much more comprehensive compared to the West, and we'll always have that bottom-up approach to take the voice and concern of the poor before planning any type of environmental protection. But that opinion at the end becomes very important, as ma'am told. Please don't start criticizing endlessly in the answer. That becomes a very wrong notion. It should always be balanced and should always be pro the Indian policies and government. Okay, with that I think.
Okay, so we come to the last question now. So it is like, does tribal development in India center around two axes, those of displacement and of rehabilitation? Give your opinion. So even this is a 15-mark question. And as they're asking the opinion here, we all have concluded, and also probably this is how the answer can be written. Is it in a balanced form? Like how we say, though the concept of tribal development in India is definitely related to displacement and rehabilitation, that is not the only way in which the things are going currently. But why does it focus? First, if we focus on, yes, it is based on displacement and rehabilitation, we do have certain justification for it. Like many of the developmental projects come into conflict with the habitats of tribal population, which is forest. Similar story is for the Ken Betwa River Link project, where Panna Tiger Reserve's area had to be encroached for the purpose of linking the two rivers, which is a developmental activity. Then it comes to various infrastructure needs. We talk about railway projects, we talk about roads and dams being constructed in the forest areas, as a result of which, again, the conflict of tribals staying in the tribal areas and their rehabilitation and resettlement becomes a question. At the same time, we also are having to provide certain basic resources to the areas around the forest, which again forces us to take the resources of the forest effectively. We can also quote the example of Sharavati project here, where hydroelectricity is generated, but the population is still not getting the proper ideas of rehabilitated ones. So if we are having a contribution of this argument, on the other hand, we do have certain aspects of tribal development being focused in India. For example, we have a concept in the state of Chhattisgarh, which is where we have sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia disease is very prominent due to the types of marriages in tribal population. So the Chhattisgarh government has focused mainly to eradicate the sickle cell anemia diseases in the tribals. So definitely we cannot tell tribal development is only based on resettlement and rehabilitation. We could also talk about how the tribal employment opportunities are being created. The One Jeevan Yojana, or we can talk about the TriFed organization as a whole, which brands and sells the tribal products to give them a better livelihood opportunity. So in India, the tribal development is taking root in this angle as well. At the same time, we can also talk about the Niyamgiri Hills, and it was an example of environmental democracy, where the Niyamgiri tribes were given a say whether the tribe mining of bauxite should be established or not. So even from a political aspect, if we see 73rd Amendment and the PESA Act gives rights to the tribal Gram Panchayats to have a say in developmental activities. So these are the areas where we can say that. And the very recent example we can quote is Pradhan Mantri Janjatiya Unnat Gram Abhiyan. So tribal villages and the overall development is what the government is focusing. So these schemes are not focusing only on rehabilitation or displacement, but the overall growth of tribals. At the same time, Adivasi Mahila Sashaktikaran Yojana, focusing on tribal women development. So these are the plans which tell us that this is not how the tribal development in India is focusing only on one angle, but the different social challenges that the tribals are facing, illiteracy or gender equality, marriages, the tribal marriage initiative in Odisha, where they are incentivizing the population to delay marriages. So these policies are all integral of India's middle path, or as Pradeep Sir just mentioned, tribal Panchashil is something we are practicing. So a recent example could be very aptly quoted here. The Nilgiri Hills in Tamil Nadu is a case study where the tribal population are used to remove the lantana camera, which is a invasive species, and this lantana camera is used to create artifacts, and these artifacts have become internationally so popular that there is an exhibition going on in USA where 100 elephants made by these tribal peoples is an example which tells that tribal development can go hand in hand with environment sustainability. So this different dimensions of tribal movement can be given by giving a brief introduction about the tribal policy government is following, which is a Nehruvian policy. We can tell different between Verrier Elvin and G.S. Gurier's adoption. We have followed an integration pattern. So I would summarize this by giving a opinion in this way. Sir, any add-ons to this?
Ma'am, I think we can divide the tribal development into the education, health,
Yes.
the governance, these aspects, so that we can in an organized way bring out the various schemes and the policies
Yes.
of the government of India since the post-independence times. And with regard to education, we can give Ekalavya model schools as the example,
Right.
and tribal Hath initiative. And in the conclusion part, I think we can mention tribal Panchil of
Panchashil. Yeah.
Jawaharlal Nehru, and rest whatever you are told, that will suffice, ma'am. And one last thing to add to is how environmental protection initiatives can come in conflict with the livelihood of tribals.
Tribals.
The
Very
displacement of tribals.
Tiger conservation has.
Yes, tiger
correct.
conservation, the establishment, the clearing of the buffer
Buffer
zone. they
zone.
do. So
Correct,
this is one
yeah,
more thing
sir.
which we can add.
Ironically, today in the newspaper, the Tribal Council of Great Nicobar has gone to the Supreme Court and told that they have not given any permission. So,
For the Nicobar project.
yeah, for the Nicobar project. But anyways, can I give some validation? Yes.
Yeah, sure.
See, in the last two questions, the interesting part is they have brought kind of ethical dilemma and they've asked your opinion. So just like in case studies, you have to take a stand. Here also you have to take a stand. But here you don't need to take an ethical stand. You have to take a balanced stand. Okay. So in the 19th question, they had asked about environmental protection versus the poor. It need not be versus, it is mutually inclusive. That is what you have to take. In this question, they have asked displacement or rehabilitation. There is nothing like that. Displacement can happen consensually. Rehabilitation can be effective. That is how you have to take. How you can start off, as ma'am told, one is Niyamgiri case study of Dongria Cones going to the Supreme Court and getting a stay for that aluminium or bauxite mining. That can be a very good case to start off with. The second part, along with that, so that shows that people are empowered to go to the court and get their rights. So that is one tribal case study. The second case study is the government empathy, creating Kanik Kshetra Kalyan Yojana, where district mineral foundations are created at all district level of the mineral district, and the conservation of that mining area is taken care of. That is the second case study that you can bring. So with these two case studies, then you can first analyze, is displacement necessary? Yes. You cannot help it. As ma'am told, the minerals are there where the tribes' habitats are. And we need the minerals for growth of the industries, but for getting that minerals, we have to displace the tribes. So yes, it is a necessity for displacement. So that is one part. Rehabilitation must, yes, obviously it is, because you're removing them from their habitat. So it becomes your job in order to habitat them properly. So that again is a must. Then comes the last part where you balance both. When displacement is a must, rehabilitation should be taken much more higher priority compared to displacement. That is where you can conclude by telling one of the remarkable legislations of India is Forest Rights Act. Forest Rights Act is the only unique legislation which actually gives community rights and individual rights to the forest dwellers themselves to control the forest resources. Even whatever displacement has to happen should happen from the consensus coming from that panchayats in that, and that is how you should end this answer, telling that how the government has been effective in providing rights to the tribes. That is how you can end, by always making sure that the opinion is very, very clear in what you do. Okay, that was my point, ma'am.
Thank you. So we have completed the discussion of GS paper 1. I hope these discussions and value additions have made a difference in the way you are looking at the UPSC preparation.
Going by the overall analysis of GS paper 1, so UPSC is expecting two important things from you. The first thing, you should pay attention to the current developments, because some questions here are directly based on, inspired by the current events. For example, Jyotirao Phule question that was inspired by the controversy related to a movie. Yeah. And they are also expecting you to be aware of the anniversaries of various historical events or the landmark policies like smart city mission, the discovery of Indus Valley civilization, etc. Secondly, you can see the integration, how they are integrating various the static topics with dynamic things. Okay, so this interlinkage you should be very well versed with. And the third very important thing is, you should not neglect any part of the syllabus. So like sometimes the students, instead of preparing, they'll focus more upon the collecting various study materials, and at the end of the day they arrive at a premature conclusion that okay, these are the questions, these are the areas from where the questions are being asked. We can afford to ignore this part of syllabus and all. For those kind of, for the aspirants who are having those kind of mindset, this is a very good wake-up call from UPSC itself. So do not ignore any topic or any part of the syllabus. And if you want to succeed and end up being an officer or a topper, you need to prepare the syllabus holistically while paying attention to the current affairs. So they are asking, they are demanding the lateral thinking as well as a holistic approach, a very comprehensive approach from you. So you better start preparing from that angle. So now is the time where you need not get into prelims preparation. Rather, I would strongly suggest you to prepare for mains till the end of December or January, and then switch over to the prelims. And preparing for mains will obviously give more depth to your preparation. It will enhance your lateral thinking abilities, and this is something which will improve your problem solving abilities. So this problem solving is something that will come in handy for you to differentiate between the right and the wrong option in the prelims paper. So in order to sharpen that ability, I suggest you to proceed with the mains preparation. So that's it. All the very best for preparation. And I hope our discussion helped you to have a right perspective and direction with regard to your approach to mains. Thank you all.
Meeting you again with the GS2 analysis. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sudeep.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.